Well, I might kick off because I know some of you have to leave sort of on time, because it's quite an interactive session anyway, so people can join in and drop out as and when suits. But it was really a chance to give people, well, our closest supporters, an opportunity to see our annual review, which just come out, but also ask questions. So I'm going to go through it, but please just stop me, ask questions, share thoughts, give comments, give feedback, give ideas, so we can keep doing things better. And Troy, if you can keep letting people in as they
yeah,
that'd be super. So I just thought we'd start actually by going to, you all know Shivia very well, so I'm not going to go through the background of Shivia and the programs, but I will point out things that have been a bit different this year. And one of the things that we've done a lot of this year is reflecting and thinking. And we decided to relook at our values, because obviously they underpin all the decisions we make. And we wanted to make sure that we actually really do live and breathe the values. So we asked some of the staff, our trustees, partner NGOs, beneficiaries, etc., to tell us what they felt our values were. And these were the 4 that we came up with. And I think they really ring true. The first one is beneficiaries first. And I think this year in COVID, we've really just made that the absolute core principle. Is we put in everything we do, we put our beneficiaries first. So we listen to them, we try and respond to their needs. We're always trying to give them really practical support and try and act with humility around them, because obviously they are first in everything we do. The second value which we came up with was fostering independence, and I think that's really just core to Shivia and our whole business model, about sort of promoting self-respect and self-reliance and creating independent enterprises. The third one was integrity, and it's so crucial. And I think we are always trying to be really transparent and honest in all our decisions, and living by our policies. I mean, so many times you have these big policy handbooks, and it's very easy just to write them and put them in a cupboard. But we really do try and live by our policies, and we actually have also revised our whole policy handbook this year. And the fourth one, which I'm actually, Joe, I think you came up with, and I totally agree with you, is that of determination. A team that is just so determined to overcome any challenge, any situation, and being resilient and just never giving up, because you do get faced with challenges, and especially this year. But everyone within Shivia, as I say, from the trustees, staff, beneficiaries, have been really determined to overcome everything thrown this year. So I thought I'd share with you, focus on those 4 values, and yeah, and because I think they're really the spirit of the organisation. And we had some other wonderful ones as well, but we're going to stick with those. Troy, can we go on to the next page, where we've got now obviously Shivia in the UK, which you all know. But this year we also set up Shivia Livelihoods Foundation in Mumbai. And Kashid, I think you're on the line. Is Kashid there? She is. Can you just quickly say hello?
Yes, we are, Ollie. Hello.
Hi, Kashid. So Kashid, one of the founding directors of Shivia Livelihoods Foundation, and the reason we founded it is because we've been trying to raise money in India for quite a long time through Nerdon, and we haven't been that successful. And we felt one of the reasons is because Nerdon's in Calcutta. We wanted a presence in Mumbai to raise funds. And with the what's called the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, that license, that regulation is getting tighter and tighter all the time. And it's getting harder to get money into the country. So we didn't want to take the risk of not being able to get money into the country. So we felt it was imperative to actually have a presence in Mumbai. So that was the first reason why we set it up. And the second is that we've now got these wonderful programs in Bengal, tried and tested programs we've been doing since 2011. And we feel we're ready to expand and take them elsewhere in India. So we wanted again a presence in Mumbai, Shivia Livelihoods Foundation, which could help us to identify other wonderful NGOs who can take those programs and replicate them. So those are the two reasons, and our plan is that Joe, who's on the call, will become the general manager of Shivia Livelihoods Foundation. But we need to obviously raise the money in India for that first. So in the interim this year, he's become Shivia's lead consultant in India rather than the general manager of just Nurden. So that if anyone has any questions, I put your hands up and I can answer. So Troy, if we go on, I'm going to leave you. You've all got copies of the review, so I'm going to leave you to read the executive summaries yourselves. But I did want to go next to the map of India, just to give you a visual of where we're now working. You all know we've been working in West Bengal, which is in Northeast India on this map, Calcutta, running our 3 programs: poultry, agriculture, and goats. But we have wanted and talked about expanding beyond Bengal for a long time. We had considered setting up Nurden in other states, but actually that's bureaucratic and costly. So we decided instead we'd work with other NGOs very aligned to our mission. And the ultimate aim is that they will replicate our programs in Bengal. But in line with our mission of creating livelihoods for dignity and entrepreneurial activities, we decided to partner this year to expand our footprint with SAF, which is an NGO we started working with. Lindsay, you'll remember in the early days of Shivia when we were doing microfinance in 2010. And we also supported them or worked with them in 2013, helping slum dwellers to upskill them in things like carpentry, masonry, plumbing, etc. So this year, we decided to work with SAF by supporting them in their what we call Beautypreneur program, helping young girls to become beauticians. And we also designed with SAF a cook training pilot scheme. So you can see that's in Jaipur, which is in the state of Rajasthan, and Ahmedabad and Vadodara, which is in Gujarat. And also you can see there where Mumbai is with Shivia Livelihoods Foundation. And Joe will talk a little bit more in detail about those programs as we go into the report. Sorry, do you want to move on, please? So the year in review, again, just gives you a flavour of what happened month by month, and I'll leave you all to look at that. And then we go on to coping with COVID, which I think probably for everybody here has dominated our whole years. How we've worked differently, how we've responded. And the COVID for us on the operational side, really started at the very beginning of our financial year, which is 1st of April, because India went into a very strict lockdown between the March and the May. And I think most of you are aware of the initial efforts, which was that we, first of all, got the team out there, educating our beneficiaries, along with as much information as we knew at the time about what COVID was, and things like social distancing practices and good hygiene, and all these migrant labourers were going back to the villages, so how they could deal with that. Our staff then couldn't actually do their normal services, so we did team up with the local government, and we started distributing goods, both COVID and non-COVID goods, such as soaps, sanitizers, face masks, and basic foods, sanitary napkins, etc. And we protected the staff with proper PPE. And at this point, we actually got permissions for the staff to move around. And then we decided to try and help some of the women actually get a little income by teaching them to make masks, and we also distributed masks into the communities. So if you go on to the next page, you can see some of the numbers involved in those initial efforts. I'm going to just see whether there are any questions on that. No, okay. So then we had the second wave. Then life felt a bit more normal again, and we got on with our usual services. But then the second wave of COVID came in, which you will all have read about in the news. It was very alarming, and and we were reading reports, and I was hearing reports from the team about not enough oxygen, no vaccinations, etc. And I mean, Chandrani, you might want to tell everybody, but can you tell everybody about your particular experience of even trying to get the COVID vaccine? You just come off mute, Chandrani.
Yes, Ollie, definitely. Actually, in the month of March and the beginning of April, none of us aware, I mean, even the people around us, leave alone the villagers, that we had to vaccinate ourselves. So we did not take vaccination very seriously. And we kept hearing in the month of March and the beginning of April, we kept hearing that COVID was happening only in the western states of India, especially southwestern, and Mumbai, Maharashtra, all those other states, which are very, very far from us, completely opposite. So we thought in West Bengal, we are quite safe. I had written my reports. I had gone and spoken to everybody. Nothing came to our notice. And West Bengal was very, very busy with election rallies, campaigns, all that. But suddenly, after the elections, all this news started spreading out in the media, in the print newspapers and all, that it's getting really bad. And West Bengal is one among the worst hit states. Now all the numbers are rising very badly, and we need to get ourselves vaccinated. So yes, I have my old mom who is almost 70 years. So I thought maybe she should get vaccinated first. So I went and got her to my place. She lives alone. And she came and she actually blackmailed us and said, if you and my son-in-law doesn't get vaccinated, I'm not doing it. So we were quite hesitatingly, we went and found out what's the situation. We were hearing that it's a bad situation and people are crowding up, where they would give only 100 vaccines, 700, 800 people were gathering at each of the hospitals, the government centers, the health centers, everywhere. So we were only hearing it. But our experience was that from the 27th of April, 27th, 28th, and then finally 29th of April, we had to struggle those 3 days and 2 nights to get only 3 of us vaccinated. And it was nightmare. In one word, it was nightmare. It was a horrifying experience. We went to a government health center, which was just next door. But the hospital stopped because they were out of stock. They did not have any vaccines available. And so we had to go to a government center where people were lining up from the previous night, 9:30 in the night, to get vaccinated the next day. So, I went and my husband and I went, and we thought that we already got COVID in November. So we are sure to get it again now, for getting vaccinated, we will get COVID once again. And this time we will not survive, because the rush was simply unimaginable. But still, because we had to do this, we had to do that, because otherwise we wouldn't have got vaccinated at all. So we stood there. I stood there. I and my husband, we took turns. The first night went into a failure because we could not get within the first 100. The second night we stood from 11:45 in the night until about 8:30 in the morning, and got our names enrolled before 50, number 50. So we were sure we would get that day. And finally at 1:45, we completed our vaccination. Of course, it was free. No, nothing was charged. But yes, in one word, it was a nightmare. And in general, everybody is facing that. Now 18 to 44, they had to face quite a bad time. And I got my daughter vaccinated towards the end of May. May was bad because 18 to 44, no one was getting vaccine anywhere. Now it's cooled down. Now
thanks, Chandrani. I think I just wanted, I think that gives a really good flavor of like, here you just kind of walk into a vaccination center. It's not really people here on the whole are quite pro having the vaccination. You go and have it and it's come out. Whereas if you're a bit anti-vaccination anyway, and then have to queue for 3 days and 2 nights, you know, it's quite off-putting. So I think that the situation in India, you know, thank gosh, has got better than it was. There is now oxygen and hospital beds, but there is still this sort of concern over the vaccinations. But then you are probably doing it for a population of what, 1.35 billion people. So yeah, I thought you might want to ask some questions about that second wave and about COVID now, because it was pretty alarming to read about. Jane, Lindsay, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, do you sense that the worst is behind, or are people fearing that, you know, as has happened in other parts of the world, that it will come back again in another form?
In India, they're saying that the third wave they're predicting another wave in another couple of months, because the population are all out and about, and there are additional sort of secondary diseases, for lack of a better term, black fungus, and the new COVID Delta variant, the Delta Plus, is now at least becoming prevalent where we live in Maharashtra. So it looks bleak for a few months more.
Okay, thank you.
Having said that, Khurshid, I would like to add just one point. I mean, this may be against what you're saying, but with this new policy now, where the central government is acquiring the vaccinations and now giving it to the states, from the 21st of June, which was, I think, day before yesterday, the World Yoga Day. So from that day, I think we are doing about 10 lakh vaccinations per day. So that's quite a big number. And if we go by that, I mean, people are saying that by the end of this year, we should be able to vaccinate 75% of the population.
Correct.
I mean, I don't say that they may do it 10 lakhs every day. There could be a shortfall because the rate of production of vaccination is not at that pace.
Yeah.
But they're doing about 10 lakh vaccinations in a day. So that's quite a big number, or quite a big jump.
So
compared to 3 lakhs and 4 lakhs.
Yeah, 1 lakh is 100,000.
Yeah, 1 lakh is 100,000. So we are doing 10 lakhs. So 100,000 vaccinations in a day. Compared to earlier about, I think it was 3 lakhs or 4 lakhs vaccinations a day. So we are going in the right direction. Maybe the pace, yes, we would definitely want everybody to vaccinate it in one day if we want. Yes, we all want that. But practically, I think that's not feasible for such a big country like us. But I think we are going in the right direction with 10 lakh of vaccinations every day, and new companies coming up with new vaccinations.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. So I think if we now move on to the programs themselves, Toria. We'll give you the program. You know who our beneficiaries are in Bengal, and you know about the poultry development services. You know our core flagship program. But I did want to say that this year, you know, we've all focused here on COVID, but there was also the worst cyclone in a decade hit Bengal in May, at the end of May, as the COVID restrictions from the first wave were lifting. And I think that cyclone Amphan, it was called, caused real devastation, and where our team were exemplary were in advising the farmers on what to do with their chicks and toolkits in advance of the cyclone when they knew it was coming, but also in helping them to rebuild their houses after. And the feedback from the farmers were that the LSPs, the livelihood service providers, really worked above and beyond and really helped them to get their lives back in the wave of complete destruction. So I would put here, it's the importance of training, it's the importance of I suppose, education for people to know what to do in these situations. And that was something I think Joe, Chandrani, and Tori, we were really proud of the team for this year. So if we can go to the next page about COVID and PDS, we've spoken a bit about the things we did in the initial phases, but one of the concerns at the beginning of the year with the UK boards who really did meet on a very regular basis to work out what to do was obviously we weren't sure about the fundraising landscape ahead of us. So we made a decision to not expand poultry this year to any new farmers, but to ensure that all our existing farmers were okay, because a lot of them had husbands who had lost their jobs because of lockdown, and they really needed to be often the sole income earners. So the team, we focused on our existing beneficiaries, and also making those who were more developed on the program independent, so that when they're no longer with us, they have independent poultry enterprises. So that was a big decision, but because we weren't working with any new farmers, sadly, we did have to make 4 of our PDS poultry livelihood service providers redundant. So we were operating on a slightly smaller team because we wanted to make sure that the funds could also go further with those existing farmers. And our hope is, as things hopefully get better, we'll be able to take them back on again. So if we go to the next page. So in terms of the numbers achieved, you can see what we've achieved since the beginning, which is 97,733 toolkits to over 14,000 families on the portfolio. For this actual year, we distributed, despite COVID, lockdowns, cyclones, we did distribute 11,606 toolkits, which was pretty remarkable given what we thought we were going to do, to 1,342 existing farmers. And we managed to make the groups I spoke about, to make them independent, and 465 farmers became totally independent of us this year. So we now have 945 farmers operating poultry enterprises, which are the sole income for those families, since we introduced the group model in 2018. And Joe, I think you might want to say something, but I think that's probably been our biggest achievement, really, hasn't it?
Yes, Oli, I think I agree with you. That has been our biggest achievement, where these farmers doing this poultry program on their own, and that has become their main source of income. I mean, before that, it was either agriculture or labor as the main source of income. But with this introduction of poultry program in a group model and finally making them independent, now poultry program has become the main source of income. So I think that is the biggest achievement as far as our poultry program is concerned.
Yeah. And if we just go on, I'd like to focus on a particular outcome, which we've noticed this year. Sorry, Troy, just one back again, if you don't mind. Thanks. Which is the impact of PDS. Because we all know what the farmers do with their money. We hear it year on year, and see it in our social impact assessment data. But this year, something which we heard from the farmers, which really struck me, was that obviously all the schools were closed in India, like they were here for much of the year. And one of the biggest aspirations for these women is to get their children in school. So they've worked so hard towards that, and then the schools close. But because, to access home learning, they don't have Wi-Fi in the same way as we have. So they have to do it through their mobile phones on data. So we were hearing reports about how the women were spending their money from the poultry to pay for data so that their kids could access home learning. And that was just fantastic that the poultry enabled that. Otherwise, these kids would simply have dropped out of school and wouldn't have returned. So, Chandran, if we go on to the next page, there's an actual case study, so 2 pages along, about Lena, who is one of these ladies who has done exactly what I've just said. So you might want to bring the case study, the story to life a bit.
Yes, Ollie. Lena is in our familiar location, and if some of you have been here, for example, Jane, you must be knowing Majida, who is one of our female LSPs in Familia. So Lena used to make jute ropes before she joined into our program in year 2019. So she used to make jute ropes, and that fetched her very, very little income. And her husband was a carpenter apprentice. He was not a proper carpenter. So he had jobs, he was on and off his work, and they carried on somehow. Then Majida, our LSP, she knew Lina. So she said, why don't you do something and in chicken farming, because you have got some space, and which would be very good later to expand and become one of the group farmers and carry poultry as the sole enterprise to give them income. So Majid actually motivated her, and they started together. Majida did all the training, and she started, yes, in 2019 she started. And in 2.5 years, she did extremely well. And last year, what happened is her husband lost whatever job he was doing because of COVID. So they almost had no income. So chickens were the only source of income for them. And she has a daughter who is 15 years old. And believe me, she would have taken her out of school even before she got into higher classes, because it was impossible for Lina to carry on sending her daughter to the school. So when the husband lost his job, they started doing more and more chickens. And now at present, she has about 70 chickens in her chicken coop, and she sells chickens for meat, and she also sells eggs. Now, what has happened is she has during COVID period, not only has she expanded her chicken business, she also enrolled into a group program because she was very, very motivated and wanted to be in the group to be able to do poultry in a larger way. And she bought a mobile phone. She was so happy that she gave a treat to Majida, and she encouraged her daughter to carry on online learning. So quite thankfully, her daughter is still in school. She is doing very well, and she hopes that her daughter is going to get a government job one day and work in the city, get married in the city perhaps. And also, not only that, she bought 2 goats from the market with the income from her chickens. So now she has a full poultry business as well as a goat enterprise to carry on and earn some source of income in the family. And the husband still doesn't have a regular job. So he's once again out of his work. So both of them have taken full interest in the goat and the chicken enterprise, and they're doing very well. And I'm especially happy because the daughter is still in school, and she hopes that she will go to college and university one day and finally get a government job one day. So that's
Thanks,
a really successful story.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dolly.
So does anyone have any questions on the poultry or any of the decisions we made, or just any thoughts to share with us? No,
I was just going to congratulate you. I think on you know, that number in terms of people becoming independent and able to sort of control their own destinies now by themselves. I mean, I think that's a great testament to the work you're doing, and it, you know, it has to be the goal. I think to if it's truly effective, is to allow people to attain that level. And the fact you've achieved so many during this tricky time, I think it's a remarkable achievement. So
thank you, Lindsay. Well, you know, it's going back to what I was saying at the beginning about one of our core values being fostering independence. And you know, one of the things we noticed in the early days is that the poultry was great, but we felt that the farmers were becoming very reliant on us and quite dependent on us. So we really tried very hard to come up with a model where they would be independent. And the pilot in 2018 sort of worked, but we then tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it. So the last 2 years have been when we've really pushed it. And that's why Joe and I were saying it's our biggest achievement, because it's actually now working. We're seeing farmers not just becoming and staying independent. So because when the staff go back and check, they are still very much running and building on these enterprises. And we also make sure that the suppliers are are indeed supplying them with good quality chicks and feed and vaccinations, and they are. So we're really delighted actually with that.
And I would like to add something there, Ollie.
Yes.
Because we started group model and started making farmers independent, we started speaking to them, giving out the message. Even farmers who did not want poultry as a core enterprise and were quite relaxed that every 2-3 months these people are coming and giving us chickens for subsidy rates, even they geared up. So they got motivated and they started doing things of their own choice, they becoming independent in that way. So now they knew that we are not going to be at their doorstep for years and years and years. So they became very serious and they started doing other things and getting independent. Even that worked out very well because of our poultry group model.
Yeah.
Ollie, I think Naushir wants to say something.
Yeah.
Naushir sir wants to
Sorry,
say.
Naushir, I didn't see you there. Thanks, Joe.
No, it's all right. Joe, I have a question for you. Do the poultry breeders in Andhra, they're largely focused in Andhra, do they know about your efforts? Is there a variety of poultry which is better than the one you're using at the moment?
So to answer that question, what happens in Andhra Pradesh is that they use the broiler chicken, the chicken which everybody eats, or most of them eat in whole across India. That is the broiler chicken. And what we are doing is broiler chicken, which is completely different.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So yeah, to answer your question, broiler chicken, we cannot make farmers independent because broiler chicken is for farmers who are big farmers who raise about 5,000, 10,000 chicken. You cannot do broiler chicken like backyard poultry. You cannot start with 10 chicken or 50 chicken or 100 chicken.
No.
So we cannot do that model in Andhra Pradesh, in West Bengal, or with small farmers. Broiler chicken only you can work with big farmers with large scale.
I've understood. So
I hope that answers your questions.
So the variety of poultry you're using is practical and the best possible.
Practical and best, and it is good for small and marginal farmers who can raise 10 chicken, 20 chicken and go from there.
Yes.
Because we are working with the lowest of the pyramid. So if you want to work with farmers who work with 5,000, 10,000 chicken, then you got to go higher up the pyramid. And our motto is to work with the lowest income people in the country.
No, the thought got triggered by my background because of my father in the dairy industry, where the local cattle gave way to Friesian Holstein, and now they're going back to Gir, which is being imported back from Brazil. It's that whole cycle because Gir is resistant to it can live in India quite easily, and the milk yield is much higher. So that was what was at the back of my mind.
Thanks.
So just as Gir is resistant in India, broiler breed is resistant in India. It's not that a broiler chicken where it dies very quickly.
Okay,
broiler is very, very strong and sturdy. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so just in the essence of time, I think we should move on to our second program, which is the agriculture. And I think one of the biggest things to say about we call it AMS this year is that you saw on the news, and we've already touched on it, is that the many migrant labourers who went back from the cities to the villages during lockdown. And our AMS program has been a bit of a saving grace for many of those people because they lost their casual labour. And we were actually amazed with how many people didn't go back to the cities when they could have, because they saw real benefit in our program. So that was a really a bit of a sort of highlight for us to see that. I mentioned earlier the cyclone Amphan, and that was obviously absolutely devastating again for the AMS program. Whole crops were destroyed and houses were ruined. But one of the fantastic things that the staff did this year was they made links with government programs for them to get compensation. And we really saw a huge difference between farmers who weren't on the program, just not able to get the compensation, and those on ours who were compensated. And I think, Joe, you might want to comment, but I mean, did the team not just go above and beyond here?
Of course, Ollie, they did. because what happens is in these government schemes, there's a lot of documentation which needs to be done to get the compensation. Now, as we know that most of these farmers are illiterate, they do not know how to fill up these forms and where to submit, what are the signatures required, what are the attachments required along with document, etc. So our LSPs, the livelihood service providers of our agriculture program, they help the farmers in filling up the forms, the signatures required, what are the attachments that go along with this form, which is the government office that they need to go to, how to submit that form. That's what our field staff helped the farmers in. So in this process, what happened was that our farmers got the compensation much faster compared to the other farmers, because the other farmers were looking around, finding out how, where, etc. Whereas our team helped our farmers to get this process done quickly. And so they got compensation much faster compared to the others.
Mm.
So that was very helpful for these farmers in this trying time, because the cyclone Amphan was a havoc in West Bengal, where most of the crops were wiped out. So this was very helpful.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
then if we go on to the numbers for the year, sorry, Troy, go back.
Right.
Please, thanks. Is you know, we started this particular program in 2014, you know, in response to our basically our farmers asking for it. So since then we've worked with 5,699, and this year we registered 1,778 new farmers on the program. And unlike the poultry, where we didn't take on any new ones because of the cost per toolkit, with the AMS, with the existing staff base, we could. And as I said, you know, with people coming back, migrant labourers coming back, the program was really, really fundamental to them. And we've had in all our social impact work, we've had you know, a lot of comments along those lines. So Troy, we can now go on, please, to the next slide, where it shows the funding priorities of the farmers. So what we're seeing really is that most of the farmers, when they make income from the agriculture, that they are spending it on taking out more land on lease to actually expand their farming, and some of the farmers are now telling us that they can actually now see profits in farming for the first time, you know, in their lives, because, you know, we're making it more affordable through bio and at home methods, and through the groups again we're forming, they're able to sell their produce further afield. So the AMS, I have to say, is going from strength to strength, and it's something which, as we go forward, we would like to definitely replicate elsewhere through other organizations. Joe, would you like to just quickly bring to life, please, Nirapada's story, because you know, just to give everyone a real life feel of someone who has benefited from the AMS this year.
Sure. So our field team, when they were doing this village meetings in the village and explaining the advantages of our agriculture program, that's when we met this farmer, Nirapada Roy. And his story is that he has taken this land on lease from another farmer for the last 5 years, but he has not made any profit in any of these years. And in fact, every time what was happening was that he was not even able to pay the lease amount that he has taken the land from. So what he was doing was he was taking a loan from the money lender on high interest, and then paying it to the person who was taking this land. So seeing all this, what has happened was that even his children who are working in the farm, they also left him and migrated to the cities. Now, of course, he could not do that. So he was still doing his agriculture along with his wife, but not making any profits. So when he met our team, and what we saw was that he was spending a lot of money on his chemical fertilizers and putting that in the field, which was not required for him. So as soon as he enrolled in our program, we saw that his whole soil was messed up because of excess use of these chemical fertilizers. So we explained to him what needs to be done, and we trained him on how to make these biofertilizers, biopesticides at home. And we connected him to a government program where the government was providing these vermicompost pits and the earthworms to prepare the vermicompost at home itself. And we trained this farmer on how to make that vermicompost. And with that, he did not have to buy these fertilizers and pesticides from the market. He actually got it from there itself. with all these kind of inputs, what we saw was that his income increased by 30 to 40%. I mean, for the last 5 years, he was not making any profits. And now on the very first year, in the 2019 itself, he made a profit of 30 to 40% because of all these inputs that we suggested to him. And also with the excess compost, vermicompost that he was making, he was able to sell that vermicompost to other farmers. So that was another source of income for this farmer. And within 2 years, by the end of last year, actually 2020, he was able to repay all the debt that he had taken in the last 5 years, along with the interest. And he's taken more land on lease for farming. And now he and his wife are so happy that they are concentrating on farming. Whereas before they were doing farming, but spending more time in working as an agricultural labor, because that was getting some money compared to his farming. So now they're doing less of that labor and spending most of their time working in their own fields, because now they got more agriculture fields to work on, and of course, more profits for them. So, I mean, this is one farmer, but we have close to 6,000 farmers like this, where we are moving them away from using chemical fertilizers to biofertilizers and biopesticides. And this, I mean, I can stick out my neck and say this is sort of a kind of a movement here where chemical fertilizers are not being used and more biofertilizers are used, which are good for the environment as a whole. And not only these 6,000 farmers that we are helping, it's also the other farmers, the neighbors, who are actually seeing what our farmers are doing and replicating it themselves by not joining our program. Of course, they are not getting all the benefits, but they're getting some benefits which they can do it themselves. So even they are moving towards this environment-friendly biopesticides and fertilizers. So, I mean, we are working with 6,000 families. If you add at least 5 members each family, we are talking about 30,000 people, and the other people who are also doing that without our help. So it's sort of a kind of a movement, if I would say that.
And I would say that, you know, this year as well, thanks, Joe. I'd say also that this year as well, you know, during the pandemic, when people are back and have been back in the villages, this has been a lifeline for them, absolute lifeline, you know, because you know, so many of these families in the villages rely on remittance home from these casual labor in the cities, and that all went. So they were solely reliant on farming and you know, and the poultry, and I think that's just something we've been hearing over and over again. And so I'd be interested this year going forward on what we see, Joe, whether people will continue to stay in the villages or go back, depending on what happens.
No, but one more point, Ollie, I would like to add here. Even before the COVID, with our program, what we saw was there were some people who had migrated to the cities, were coming back to the villages and starting agriculture because of the profits that they were seeing the other farmers were making. So even without the COVID, we saw some people coming back to the village. So hopefully that should continue, and I would be very happy if that happens.
So are there any questions on agriculture before we move on? You might want to put them in the chat, those of you who've got your videos off, because I can't see hands going up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just one question, Joe.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned you have 6,000 farmers?
Yes, sir. It's 5,800 and something to be accurate. Chandra, Devi, how much is it? Close to 6,000, yes.
Is it possible to form them into a cooperative? Again, I'm drawing on the dairy sector.
We have the farmer groups.
Okay, so what we are doing is we are forming these farmers into smaller groups of 15 to 25. And the reason why we are not making into a cooperative is because this is West Bengal, and cooperative is a bad word. Yeah. So we are trying to avoid a big cooperative, but we are trying to make these small groups of 15 to 25 farmers. And we are purposely not making one big, huge group.
Why is it
to avoid this political? It has to do more with politics, sir. I mean, if you form a cooperative, you have politicians who would be pursuing them in one direction, or there's a chances of that happening in one direction. And that's a bad word in West Bengal for a long period of time. So that's the reason why we are avoiding it purposely.
Because the success of Amul is so apparent.
Yeah, yes. I agree completely with you about Amul.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Thanks, Norsha, for your question. If we move on to the goat farming, I explained at the beginning how, we had to take some harder decisions at the beginning of the year because we were very unsure about the fundraising landscape and also about how much our staff, the capacity of the staff when they couldn't move around. So what we should be focusing our efforts on. So we did decide as a board that we would phase out the goat farming program this year. But the absolute commitment, going back to our values, was protecting the beneficiaries. So anybody on the program, the goal was that we would make sure that they were able to entirely run their goat enterprise before we stop the support. So we have this year done exactly that. And we now have, since the beginning, including the numbers in the pilot and the program, 371 families operating entirely independent goat farming enterprises on their own. And those are now also the sole or the main source of income for those families. And what we did this year instead is as with the poultry and the agriculture, we developed a manual incorporating all the knowledge and experience that we have gained since 2016. And you can see the little goat farming manual here on the bottom. And so which gives us the opportunity to reintroduce the program in future, either in Bengal or to other NGOs elsewhere in India where there's a need, when we're more sure of funding and staff capacity. So you might want to ask questions about that decision, or you might be okay with it.
It's not questioning the decision, but I'm just intrigued. The manual, when you go and approach other organizations with your thoughts and your experience, do you find people are actually receptive, or are they resistant to taking advice from other people, or is it more an open door and people are very welcome to it?
Well, I think Lindsay, it's a good question. I think what and one of the things Joe's been doing a lot of this year is researching very like-minded NGOs, aligned to us in our mission and our vision and our goals, and the types of beneficiaries they work with. And we have actually zoned in mainly in Northeast India, where culturally we're more aligned. So when Joe has been going to visit those NGOs, they live in quite similar conditions. And so we know that the poultry, the agriculture and the goat programs could potentially work. And, that they are, on the whole, extremely receptive. I think the big question will come down to who funds it initially. So because everyone's short of funds. So I think that the idea is that Shivia will help initially to fund to get these things going, and when they see the benefits, they can slowly take it over.
Thank you.
So just before we move on from the goats, we've spoken about the challenges of COVID with the poultry and the agriculture, and the goats had similar challenges, of course, with the staff being able to move around. But also one of the things that happened in the cyclone was many goats got washed away. And even though we have insurance for the goats, unless you can actually prove the dead body, show it, you can't get the compensation. So a decision we made was that we did actually replace the goats of those families who were lost. These people, the people we're working with, have been in desperate situations this year. So that's just a decision we took. Okay, Turia, please. Perfect, thank you. So I mentioned at the beginning that we wanted to, expand beyond Bengal to help more people elsewhere in India, which is our mission, our reason for existence. But also one of the things we have realized is that being dependent on one state with one NGO, with all the change in regulation, is just too risky. It's like having, excuse the pun with poultry, but all our eggs in one basket. So we decided to work with SARTH again, as I mentioned at the beginning, an NGO who's extremely well known to us since the early days of Shivia and very culturally aligned. And we supported their beautypreneur program, helping these young girls to become cooks. And the plan is, we started in October as 180 girls. And then we also designed with them a cook training program, because the demand for cooks is getting higher and higher as women go to work, but also in COVID as people have been going out to eat less. So the training is really involved around, better cooking practices, hygienic practices, a wider sort of range of foods for these families, and also training the girls on knowing their rights. So if you are a cook, you are just a cook, and I think that's quite important. And Joe has been to visit. Joe was actually there opening the cook training centre, and cutting. You'll see in one of these photos, I think, him cutting the ribbon. But Joe, would you like to maybe shed a light on some of the difference these programs are making to these girls, earning back to our strapline, livelihood with dignity?
Sure, Ollie. Now coming to Gujarat and Rajasthan, they are slightly different compared to West Bengal. In fact, I would say there are many differences between Rajasthan, Gujarat and West Bengal where we're working. So a couple of differences I would like to point out before I talk about it. So first thing is that in West Bengal, we are working in the rural parts of West Bengal, whereas in Gujarat and Rajasthan, we are working in the urban setting. So that is one difference. And the second difference is that people are culturally slightly different here in the sense that people in West Bengal, they prefer to work rather than doing business. Whereas in Gujarat and Rajasthan, people are more inclined to doing business in entrepreneur, even if it's a small income compared to working for someone at a higher salary. So that is the different kind of mindset people have here compared to West Bengal. And so because of this entrepreneurship in them, we have decided to train these 180 beautypreneurs and 20 cooks. Is because these beautypreneurs, again, the word is from beauticians plus entrepreneurs, so beautypreneurs. So they have already trained and become beauticians, but they lack the entrepreneurial skills in terms of maintaining records of their income and expenditure account, how to be hygienic, the basic things. I mean, sometimes they were very weak in their basic things about a beautician. So during this training of 2 months, they learned about the strong basics about this beauticians. Third was about marketing. How can they market their salon? Because there's so much of competition there. What edge do you have? So those are the trainings that we provided during these 2 months. And what we have seen is that with this training, these beauticians or beautypreneurs are earning at least 20 to 30% extra income compared to what they were doing before they joined the SATS training program. So that is what I saw when I visited both Jaipur in Rajasthan and Ahmedabad and Baroda in Gujarat. So that is about the beautician program. And now coming to the cooks program. Now this is for, again, the culture in Gujarat is that you have both the husband and wife working or doing businesses. And when they come back in the evening, they don't have the time or the energy to cook once again at home. So what they do is either they go out for dinner or make something small at home itself. And they would like somebody who can come home and actually cook a proper meal and a hygienic meal for them. And that's where these housemaids used to come. But these housemaids are only doing the cleaning and washing for them initially. Now, these kind of women were trained to actually cook different kinds of Indian food as well as Mexican, Thai, Chinese food in a hygienic environment. Now, with this new learning, they are now able to also cook at their houses. So these families are benefiting because the cooking is taking at home itself in a hygienic environment. And these women are benefiting because now they are getting a higher salary or higher income because they are doing cleaning, washing, and now also hygienic cooking. So the idea was to train about 20 women. And this year, I think till now, we were able to achieve 5. And by October, I think that we complete 1 year, we'll train another 15 of them. And what we have seen again is that these housemaids were earning about 3,000 to 4,000 rupees before they did the cooking. And now they're doing about 6 to 8 or 6 to 10,000 rupees with the cooking. So that is the improvement in their income because of this training in the cooks program. So these are the 2 programs that I saw in Gujarat and Rajasthan.
Thanks, Joe. I think it's probably important to point out as well as that, we're probably running this program with South for a couple of years, certainly the beautypreneur, because by then they feel that that's probably, then you don't want to saturate the market in these areas as well with all these beauticians. And the cook training program is something very much that we we have designed with them, and it's something which we think could be scalable to different parts of India. But with our main focus is going to be actually finding NGOs to replicate our poultry, agriculture, and goats with, and that's really what Joe's going to be focusing on going forwards. So, are there any questions on that?
Ollie, we also, as you know, supported SAT from Shivia Livelihoods Foundation. And you'll be happy to know that another NGO I work with, I'm a trustee, Seva Sadan, has offered cooks jobs from SAT. So we're trying to tie that up, and we hope that Joe's cooks will now be able to, if they want to work in a city like Bombay, we're happy to offer jobs.
Excellent. Thank you, Kashid. Yeah, so Kashid, one of the things we mentioned at the beginning was we're informing Shivia Livelihoods Foundation. We want to sort of enhance our programs through networks and connections, and that's just what Kashid is doing there. So great, Kashid. Thank you. Derek.
Yes. Hi, Ollie. Sorry,
Hi,
listen,
hi.
I was late on the call, so apologies. You may have covered this at the beginning, but just that relationship between yourselves and SAT, and in terms of the direction of travel, say the next 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, the idea is to use the skill set and some of that SAT training program and taking that to West Bengal and then vice versa. Or can you explain the sort of how you're both interacting on this?
Yeah, so forgetting South for 1 minute, the major direction of travel is that we're going to find NGOs very aligned to us to actually replicate the poultry, agriculture and goats outside Bengal, probably in the states of Bihar, Odisha, which are so neighboring states to Bengal, because they're culturally and politically, well, not politically similar, but culturally similar. But we wanted to expand beyond Bengal this year, and we know South well from the early days of Shivia, and we felt that their programs were very much aligned to ours of creating livelihoods and entrepreneurial activity, and we're sort of almost by supporting it, learning from it. So if the learnings, if we feel it's a program which could work in the rural settings, by training cooks or certainly beauticians, because the demand for beauty services is very big anywhere in India, we will indeed try and replicate these programs with Nurdan in Bengal. So Chandrani, wherever you've gone, Chandrani, that'll be something Chandrani takes on.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So just with time, we'll go on to the next next section, Torre, which is, I think you'll all appreciate the title "New Ways of Working." I think we've all had to think differently and embrace technology in a way that, well, here we all are now, in a way that we never did necessarily a year ago. And so I think, this year what we've tried to do is, many of our normal fundraising and engagement events were cancelled. So we tried to put as much online as possible. And we've provided people with, Zoom updates on COVID in India. We've got both Lindsay and Derek from Artemis here today. And we put very sadly, one of the highlights of the year usually is taking Artemis colleagues and families out to India on a family field trip. And that was, I'll say postponed, Derek, rather than cancelled. And so we tried to put on a day with Artemis where we, one of the things about these field trips is that, as well as very educational and I suppose humbling, they're also quite fun. So we tried to make it quite a fun day with a quiz of India and cooking curries, and then also talking to our beneficiaries and staff. But I think the highlight of the year, Torre, if we just go on one page, was our virtual field trip. We have many people who ask us to come out to India, but our staff actually do have a job to do, delivering services. So we can't take that many people, and also, in many ways, it doesn't make sense. And so actually a bit of an unintended positive consequence of COVID is that we were able to take 150 people on the day, and over 200 people have watched us since, people out to India to meet the beneficiaries through technology. And it was an extraordinary day. We had, people sitting in their homes here in the UK, US, wherever they were, talking to our farmers and beneficiaries through simple smartphones, with Joe and Chandrani translating with the fading light over the paddy fields, but somehow we pulled it off. And I think that was, Victoria, you might want to say something because you were largely behind the scenes dabbling with the technology.
Yeah, the vision, if you can imagine, a duck sort of, or swan serenely swimming along, but with the feet, paddling madly under the water, and letting people in, who we were sort of slightly overwhelmed by how many people joined us. And so, while Ollie was talking and I was letting people in, and then, we were changing slides and trying to make sure that as Chandrani and Joe, who were in Calcutta, were talking, they weren't filling the screen, but we could see the people in the villages, on screen. So I learned a lot about how Zoom works quite quickly. Yeah, and it was good. It was good. It was a bit nerve-wracking. It was good fun. It was a really supportive audience as usual. Thank you to everyone who was there. And yeah, I think it's just set a new precedent that we can do this. We can do this again. We got such great feedback. We've just put a few little quotes on our report here, but we had many more, all very positive about the way it worked. So I think we'll be doing another, won't we, Ollie?
Yeah, so I think the plan is we'll run another one in November. And, I would really welcome your feedback and thoughts about what you'd like to see in that this year, so we can make it happen. Because we will make stuff happen, if we have the ideas there. So, what would you like, if you think about what you would like include? Would you like just to go to Bengal, or would you like to go to Gujarat? Would you maybe like to go to Orissa and visit some of the organisations we're planning to partner with? We can do it. So I'd really welcome you to all have a little think and let us know what you'd like to see in that field trip, and we will work hard to put that together. Yeah, sorry, yes, there was a
hand up. I didn't.
Okay. The other thing that we did, which was through Shivia Livelihoods Foundation, thanks to Kashid and Noshir, was the Tatars asked us to run a 2-day course, again embracing technology, to talk to some of their emerging leaders about what they called unconventional learnings. How does an NGO, which doesn't have much budget at its fingertips, what kind of decisions do you make versus a corporate which probably has quite a large budget in comparison? And it was all about sort of the authenticity of running an NGO compared with the corporate. And again, we had TCS, Tata Consultancy Service staff dialing in from the US, from India, with our team here in the UK and in India, and it was a fantastic 2 days. And I thank Kashid for bringing it in, but also I felt this was another positive of COVID, enabling us to bring a real global community to think about issues. So we're going to be looking for more opportunities like that, because the feedback we got from those emerging leaders was really spectacular. My hope, and Lindsay and Derek, is that we will be able to run in October, or certainly next year, October 2022, the family field trip to India again in person. But in the meantime, we will put on anything you want us to put on for the staff at Artemis.
Ollie, that's very kind. Thank you for that. Can I just ask one question on Tata?
Oh.
Because there's been the relationship with Tata is goes back a bit, but it sort of looked like it was going to sort of develop into something a bit more, and then things got in the way with COVID, etc. Do you sense that 2-day sort of session with them has pushed it forward again, and it might be up their agenda a bit to work with Shivia a bit more in the future, do you think?
Yes, yeah, so I'll answer that, and then I'll hand over to Kashid or Noshir to comment on that too. I think that last Jane, after our field trip to India in January 2019, 2020. So thanks, Toria. 2020. We went over to Mumbai and met the Tata Trust, and it was all very encouraging. And we had, conversations with them after. And then, as you were saying, COVID hit, and a lot of foundations and trusts sort of pivoted and put their funds into COVID relief efforts rather than into supporting, non-COVID programs. So that was definitely put on hold at that point, but very much with the intention that when COVID dies down, we'll pick it up again. But COVID hasn't died down in India, certainly. But Khurshid managed to, in the interim, give us this opportunity with the Tata Consultancy Services. And from what I understand, they would like to do that again. Khurshid, you might like to comment on that.
Sure. Lindsay, we ran a 2-day workshop, and as Ollie said, the responses were astounding. I gather that somebody wrote into Ollie saying, this is the best evening I've spent in training out of all my trainings anywhere. So the response was very encouraging, and I started to follow up from my end with Mr. Emmanuel David of the Tata Management Training Center in Pune, which is a 3-4 hour drive south of Bombay. And right at that time, the second wave hit, and it hit Maharashtra very badly, on top of which he's leaving. So the good news is that having written several mails to him and reminding him if he could connect us with some of the senior TCS people, Tata Consultancy Service people who were on with us, because they came up with very innovative ideas about how to take things forward. But the person in the middle has not been able to make the connections because there's nobody working at the TMTC. They're short-staffed. The accounts people haven't come in. So this fell low on the agenda. But the good news is that because he's leaving, the new person who has come in has been very, very encouraging. And the response is we've established connection very quickly within 48 hours of his appointment. So we're looking forward now to pushing it all through with the new person as soon as he joins. I think it's on the 1st of next month. And the good news is that he's coming on to my talk on Sunday at the World Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce, where I'm speaking generally about all the NGOs I work with, what I do, why I do what I do, and what can we do more, basically in 4 sections. And there are loads of Tata people coming on to that, including the new head. And the first NGO in my presentation is Shivia. So it looks as though it's going to move in the right direction. Yes.
Thanks, Khurshid.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
After Emmanuel David retires, he was on a 2-year extension because they couldn't find somebody. Now they have found someone, Krishna, who was with the Tata Group 30 years ago, and he comes back. Now he's a real high flyer. He will also be the number 2 to the Group Human Resource Director. He's called Deputy Director, Group Human Resource and Director TMTC. So I wrote to him saying, congratulations, I read this in the press, and he promptly wrote back saying, I know you, I know of you, and I know your concerns, etc. So he must have read my name in the files and all the things that, I've been saying that the Tata Management Training Center should really go to level next now. So the new person will have a fine rapport with, I'm sure.
So Lindsay, just so you know, Norshe, who's speaking, was with the Tatas for, the 1960 batch, weren't you, Norshe, in Tata Consultancy Services? And it was because of Norshe we got the connection in the first place. So he's pushing for it behind the scenes.
She's asking your question.
No, she's explaining who I am to the others.
Yeah, but she's asking you, weren't you in the 60 batch? She's asking.
Oh, sorry, yes.
1960 batch, yes. So it's been there for many years. So Norshe behind the scenes is trying to keep this relationship alive during COVID when, not much is happening in India.
Thank you.
Yeah, Norshe, I'm going to move on just because of the time, if that's all right. So finances is next up. We had a stronger year than we were anticipating, and you can see the total is 459,921, but that is also including the pro bono work, which in charity accounts you do include. of 143033. And that work was really beneficial to us. And I can see Olivia Bushell on the call from Skadden and Kathy Jones from Clifford Chance. And both firms have been absolutely brilliant in helping us with the setting up of Shivia Livelihoods Foundation, with things like Joe's contract to become Shivia's consultant contract from the UK directly, because it's all quite complicated with regulation. So that has been a really great service for us this year. I will leave you to look at the numbers, and you can ask me any questions now or after. No? Good. So if you look about our funding our ambitions, which is the next section, we're aiming to raise £400,000 this year, of which, and that's not including the pro bono services, that's the cash, of which we're planned that 360 will go towards our operational plan. And then we want to, we always try and build our reserves. And I'm so glad that we spent years as a board with a strong reserves policy, because at the beginning of the year, when every fundraising event was being cancelled, we knew we had our reserves which we could pull on. So we were seeing lots of NGOs going under, but we were confident that we would be able to weather the storm because of that discipline, that financial discipline of building those reserves over the years. I can talk through any of the numbers. I mean, you might want to see that we're going to put about £94,000 into the poultry through Nerden, 33 into the agriculture, because it's much more cost effective through Nerden. We're planning to put another 25 or so into the beauty, the cooks. We also want to, as I say, introduce the poultry and the agriculture through, Joe, we were saying, won't we, 2 NGOs this year in probably the neighbouring states of Orissa. And Joe, would you like to make a comment on that, because you visited them?
Yes, Ollie, definitely. I mean, I visited the state of Orissa, where I saw 4 organizations. They're very good organizations, good governance. They have the FCRA license in place by which we can get the foreign currency into them. But what happened was that the COVID struck and I couldn't make more visits. But I zeroed on those three organizations, which are quite promising. And given that our agriculture program, our poultry program, it has been time tested, we have our manuals in place, we can definitely do the replication in the state of Odisha, which is a neighboring state. And I'm looking at other states also, like Bihar and Jharkhand, which are close to West Bengal.
And they're all on what they call the poverty corridor. So they're all known to be the poorer states in India. And so this time next year, when we have this call, what I would like to be able to tell you is that we've got in Bengal the poultry and the agriculture with Nerden, which will always remain our real core. And then we'll have hopefully 2 NGOs in either Orissa, Jharkhand, or Bihar, those neighboring states, replicating the poultry or the agriculture.
Maybe one in Maharashtra also. We're looking.
But this is because this in terms of the UK budget rather than the SLF budget.
Ah, okay.
And then we will also be expanding that cook program to make sure it actually works beyond the pilot, and supporting the beautypreneurs. So that's what I want to be able to tell you this time next year in terms of the UK side. That's what I will be telling you next year, Joe. So the final page is really a huge thank you to all of you, and I mean, Artemis has just remained so loyal and supportive, and the Maya Foundation, Jane and Lars, you've just been brilliant. I see you on the call. You've all just all been fantastic. Christina from Advent of Change, who's on the call, and you've just all been amazing. So thank you very much for your support. And that is basically the report, and you can read it actually the detail at your convenience. But I hope that was helpful.
No, it was. Thank you so much. And I mean, first of all, the report itself, I mean, charities 100 times bigger than yours in terms of revenue would be we do sometimes well to look at that, because they don't do such a good job in the annual review. I think it's excellent. I think it covers off a lot of areas, you know, and it's very reassuring in the details. So, you know, well done on that. And,
well, that's really Victoria who's put her magic wand to
well
the
done, Victoria. Well done.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, Ollie gives me the words and the numbers, and I turn it into this sort of presentation. Yeah, but it's got to start with the words and the numbers, and that comes from Ollie and Chandrani and Joe, really.
Well, it's excellent.
And turns
Victoria,
into
you're
a-
just being humble. You're just being humble, Victoria. You got this magic wand, your magic fingers.
And like I was saying, it turns into a thesis book. You know, somebody can get a PhD degree over this.
Well, you're very kind. I enjoyed doing it. Yeah, I'm glad. Thanks for the feedback, though, Lindsay, because
No, I think
you know, I sort of feel like I've seen it a number of times, and it's a bit like you can't sort of see it anymore of how it might look for a first-time viewer. But I'm glad it stands out, you know, as something that is nice to look at as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions before we close? Or comments? No.
Well, just well done. I mean, it's been a tough old year, and I think, you know, to pivot as well as you have, and to still manage to keep the fundraising coming in, is a real achievement. And you know, I think, if just speaking generally, you know, on behalf of Derek and I, really, but I mean, when we see a lot of charities, and over the last year, it's been very interesting how the better run and the better management teams of charities have clearly demonstrated, you know, their abilities, and others have struggled. But I think, you know, Ollie, you and everyone in the team should be very proud of the way you have adapted and coped, and may indeed come out stronger from it in terms of sort of reappraising how everything should be organized and run, and probably laying down foundations for future growth that maybe you just wouldn't have done had things been going on as they were. So I think out of it can come a lot of good, but you've certainly handled it very well over the last year. So well done.
I think that has. I think you're right about, you know, some things emerging, and actually at the beginning of the report there is a little when you're on the PDF, a little video a little link you can click on, which is a welcome message from me and from Chandran, and we talk about that emerging a bit stronger, because I think it has been a year of time to think. We're not all charging around at events, and we've all been you know, a lot of reflection and trying to, as a board, really focus on the risks, and trying to address those, and also on our strengths, and trying to work on those, and our expansion plans, and, as I mentioned at the beginning, our values, to make sure we always live and breathe them. So I think it's been a time of reflection, and making sure what we do well, we do really well. But also, as we were saying, you know, all of us, I think, in a way, have benefited from embracing technology. You know, think about the environment, none of those flights whizzing around. Think about the time saved. You know, I would say work-life balance hasn't been that great in terms of having 3 small children at home all year.
But Ollie, it's the one thing I would say, it's a damn sight easier running across a virtual field than it is in reality.
Derek, you'll be back there before you know it, running back across that.
I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to seeing Joe and Chandrani again. I can't wait to see you both.
Oh.
Yeah, we are looking forward to it, Derek. We are looking forward to it.
And I find taking you all to the actual field is more exciting for me.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I was going to say, we have embraced technology, but nothing replaces human energy.
I agree, completely agree.
Being there, yeah.
Yeah, so I do look forward to when we can get back out there, and you notice things, you see things, you hear things, you observe. Jane, you'll remember on your trip, constantly observing, constantly commenting things. The train journey to Krishnagar. Jane will never ever forget that. Yeah. Well, look, I know it's everybody's lunch break, so thank you for being with us. And if there are any if you ever think of anything, or you know, that could work or that couldn't work. Please, just always, we're always open to ideas.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, team. Well done.
Thanks, Victoria.
Brilliant job.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, everyone.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.